One of the biggest areas of need that had to be upgraded and need to be addressed this offseason after the very disappointing regular season the New York Rangers just had was the defense core. I think that's pretty obvious there. The overall team defensively was just nowhere near good enough, and whether or not you want to blame that on, the coaching staff and some of the assistants possibly and Peter Laviolette, or whether you want to blame that more on the kind of defensemen or the forwards, you can kind of pass a lot of the blame around, right? I think there's kind of blame to go around everywhere, to the forwards, defense, and coaching staff as well. But so far this offseason, we have seen the Rangers go out there and make some pretty drastic changes with not only this entire team, but specifically, making two pretty massive changes with the defense core by, of course, adding in arguably the top free agent available forward or defenseman in Vladislav Gavrikov. And also, we saw the team go out there and, of course, make a pretty major trade by shipping off Keandre Miller in a sign-and-trade deal over to the Carolina Hurricanes, where the Rangers got back a first and second round pick, but also a defenseman who can potentially be a pretty impactful player at some point this season, maybe right away on opening night, maybe at some point later on in the season there, but they picked up a player who's in his early 20s right now, a 22-year-old sort of two-way guy, maybe a little more kind of offensive in Scott Morrow, but has some decent size there, 6'2". I would say is kind of a two-way guy, but definitely a little more on the offensive side of things there. But, they picked up Scott Morrow, they added in Vladislav Gavrikov, they shipped off Keandre Miller, who was at moments and quite a bit of time there was a liability for this team. And it wasn't just throughout this past season there, right? It's been in past playoffs, it's been in past regular seasons as well. So it was many, many years of seeing this player at moments be quite phenomenal, but at moments also, and more so, more of the time, be a bit of a liability and a bit of a negative to have out there on the ice defensively. So I think making that trade was probably what's best for this team going forward. And also picking up Vladislav Gavrikov was definitely, I would say, a pretty massive upgrade. So far on paper, I would definitely say the New York Rangers are looking like a much better team defensively, at least with the defense core there. On paper, I do think this team is clearly better than last season there. If you kind of go one for one, like I said, Gavrikov over Keandre, I think that's a pretty clear kind of upgrade there. We're getting a very good shutdown, lockdown defensive defenseman there who is one of the top at that in the entire NHL, at least kind of top 10 or 15 or so. So we got a very good defenseman there in Vladislav Gavrikov. We also got a solid kind of worst case scenario, solid call-up candidate there in Scott Morrow. Best case, he's probably on that third line, possibly, playing a decent role there. So I think we have seen this team make some solid upgrades on the back end, but in today's video, I thought we'd take a look at this Hockey Writers article where they go on to kind of talk about a certain area of maybe still kind of need for the Rangers to address even after signing a guy like Vladislav Gavrikov, and of course that is talking about the defense core. So let's take a look at what they had to say in this article, where they go on to say there's one area the Rangers face an unknown that will likely have to be addressed at some point. A left-handed defenseman who can play in the top four. While Morrow probably becomes the organization's second best prospect in the system and could be a great pickup, he's likely not an option at left defense, which I also would agree with, he's probably not. Assuming Gavrikov plays regularly with Fox, the only two legitimate other candidates to fill the Miller vacancy are Carson Soucy and Braden Schneider, which I honestly, and we'll kind of talk about this in a second there, and if you watch my videos in the past there and taken a look at my kind of projected lines there and kind of what I want to see happen, I've talked a decent bit about possibly seeing Braden Schneider get a opportunity to once again, like he did it at moments for a bit last season, get an opportunity on that kind of second pair on the left side and possibly going alongside Will Borkin, which I don't think would necessarily be a bad idea at all. They could also, of course, they kind of talked about in this article here, go with maybe a guy like Carson Soucy instead, which also, might not be the worst idea. But the one issue with having Carson Soucy in that kind of top four spot on the left side is because you probably wouldn't see Scott Morrow in the actual lineup if that ends up happening, and we do see Soucy on the second pair on the left side, because in that scenario, unless you're putting a guy like Braden Schneider over to the left side on the third pair, you're going to have your 1-2-3 punch on the right side of Foxy, Borgen, Schneider, which in theory, obviously, you're not going to have a guy like Morrow on the left side, so that would mean he would not at all be in the lineup. And then in your third pair, you're probably having like Urho Vakanainen alongside Schneider. Your second pair, you're probably having Carson Soucy alongside Borgen, and your top pair, you're having Gavrikov alongside Foxy, which I don't think is the worst idea in the world, but I do think I'd probably rather see a guy like Scott Morrow get an opportunity in the lineup over someone like an Urho Vakanainen, which in that case, I do think it probably is best to put a guy like Braden Schneider on the second pair on the left side there to fill that kind of Keandre Miller hole, and then you have Borgen go alongside him. So your top pair is Gavrikov, Foxy, your second pair is Schneider, Borgen, and your third pair could end up being Soucy alongside Scott Morrow, which I don't think would be a bad third pair at all. You have a more veteran kind of defensive defenseman there, a bigger, kind of tougher guy in Soucy going alongside the kind of younger, still decent size at 6'2", but more of a kind of prospect, inexperienced, more kind of offensive guy who's, still all right defensively, but definitely more on the offensive side of things than defensive. So I think as of right now, that's probably what my favorite kind of pairings are going into this upcoming season and kind of what I want to see happen. Although, it very well could end up happening where we see Soucy on that kind of second pair on the left side. And as of right now, that's kind of what I'm guessing might happen if I kind of had to guess what Mike Sullivan and the coaching staff would decide to do. But personally, I would rather see Schneider on the left side there, which I don't think would be too bad at. I mean, we saw that happen a little bit last season there. We also have seen that a bit back in his junior days as well. So he has made that switch from the right to the left side in the past, although he is a righty. So it's happened before. He has a bit of experience, and I think giving it a try there would not be the worst idea. And I think the kind of highest upside kind of possible outcome for this team for this upcoming season for the defense core is to definitely have your pairings be Gavrikov alongside Foxy, Schneider and Borgen, and then for your third pair, Soucy and Morrow, which I think really could be a much better pairing than you might initially kind of think, with Soucy, yes, having a pretty awful, last season there, but I think under a new coaching staff, new system, having a full offseason there, Soucy should be a whole lot better. And I do think at moments he can be a bit of a kind of lower tier second pairing caliber defenseman. So if he can get back to that and bring that kind of game alongside the younger offensive kind of Scott Morrow, that really could be a great kind of third pair for this team. And the second pair of Schneider Borgen could be pretty great as well. And the top pair of Gavrikov Foxy could be one of the top pairs in the entire NHL. And another little piece to take a look at here from this article, they go on to say, Schneider, meanwhile, has found some success on the second pair, especially dating back to the 2024 postseason when paired with Miller. However, asking him to play his offside next to Borgen won't be an easy task. Maybe Schneider can find some success next to Morrow if the 22-year-old offensive-minded defenseman is ready for the responsibility. That seems like a better fit. And honestly, I don't mind that at all either. If they do want to have a guy like Schneider on the left side, on the third pair to go alongside Morrow, I don't hate that, but to me, I would put someone like Schneider on that second pair on the left side playing his offhand over someone like Carson Soucy. That's just my opinion. That's kind of what I would rather see. I am pretty high on Schneider. I think he has a lot more room to grow and get even better, but I just think at the end of the day, if you have the choice of Schneider playing on the left side second pair or Soucy, I'm taking Schneider personally, but I do think on that third pair, having Scott Morrow is really an ideal scenario because he's got a lot of potential there. He's very young, very cheap, and he is an offensive kind of guy as well, so he could be someone to possibly help kind of quarterback that second power play a bit there. Maybe he can be someone who just ends up becoming a really kind of great defenseman this upcoming year and ends up blossoming into a top 4 caliber guy, and he ends up, bumping down a guy like Borgen to the third pair. He is very young, very, very talented, so I really do want to see kind of what he can do at the NHL level there. I think he has a lot of kind of upside, so ideally kind of getting him some ice time right away at the NHL level is kind of what I want to see, but it really does kind of depend whether or not they want to see Schneider go to the left side, because if they want to keep Schneider on the right side there, to me, we're not going to see Scott Morrow in the actual opening night lineup, or really for the most part at all next season possibly, unless we do see injuries happen, or if they change their mind at some point, switching Schneider to the left, because right now, the 1-2-3 punch on the right side is pretty much set in stone unless they are going to move Schneider to the left side, which, like I said, I do think is probably what's best for this team right now to get the most out of this defense core overall. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day a video about the New York Rangers. So if you are a Rangers fan, there's no better place to be on YouTube than this channel. So hit that like and subscribe button for daily content, and also definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you agree with my thought and kind of take their own thinking that Schneider being on the left side is probably what's best for this team? Do you want to see Scott Morrow get into the lineup right away, the 22-year-old prospect? Let me know your thoughts on this defense core as a whole, and do you think we have seen some pretty big upgrades and, enough kind of movement on the back end there to make this team a true kind of playoff team once again? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and bye.